We are here with a very special guest, Elliot Forrest.
He is the host for WQXR, one of the world's most listened to classical radio stations, and he's hosted many concerts at Carnegie Hall itself. He's kind of does our job most of the time. He's hosted and produced it and directed specials for PBS television, and he, interestingly enough, has collaborated on several occasions with PDQ Bach. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Greg and Elizabeth. It's great to be with you.
Well, it's wonderful to have you here. So you just moderated a symposium with the jury members for the public here in Fort Worth. Can you summarize what you talked about for this general audience?
Was there anything interesting or unexpected you learned?
There was absolutely nothing interesting in the entire hour and a half. No, it was great because all the jurors, all the people that are really listening and making the decisions throughout the course of the competition were on my panel, and they don't really collaborate that much, which was a surprise to me. You know, that they make their own judgments, they do their own scoring, and they get together and they submit these scores, and that's how the person is ultimately chosen. But one of the people had asked, I guess Joseph Kallichstein, they said, well, what are you looking for?
Yeah.
And he was fond of saying that we're not really looking for anything. You know, they're just experiencing it and trying to really hear these things and hear what they hear new and hear how these people interpret these things without sort of trying to impose some sort of sense of guideline about technique or style or anything like that. So they were very open about what they were experiencing and very concerned that they would pick the right person, not only that could play well, but could have the stamina to do 300 concerts maybe over the next year or two if they get the gold medal.
Right.
Wow, well, that's fascinating. Moving on to your world of radio in particular, we've been learning as webcast hosts for the Medici.tv produced events here of all of the unexpected challenges of live broadcast. We're curious, in all of your years of hosting, have any particular anecdotes, do any stick out, any funny?
Oh, well, it's been a really remarkable career. 12 years at A&E Television, hosting Breakfast with the Arts. I actually, this last November, crossed the number of being on the radio in New York. I started 30 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And so it's really been a gift to spend my life in the arts, to spend my life talking to some of the great artists of the world, including you guys. We play your recordings on QXR all the time. These remarkable pianists both play extremely well, and also you pick an interesting repertoire and write your own stuff, so it's really great to play your recordings on the air. You know, there's been a lot of crazy stuff. You know, I guess one that I do remember was we have our own performance space at WQXR, and Stephen Sondheim was a guest.
Oh.
And I had just read one of his books on his music, and so there was a particular aspect about the genesis of one of his musicals that I just read in his book. So I, you know, in all of my questions, and you don't want to be, you know, wrong, and you don't want to be, you want to really be prepared to interview Stephen Sondheim. So it's just the two of us on stage. And so I said, so this fact that I had just read, and he was like, well, that's not exactly correct. And there was a moment where I thought, I could go get his book. And I could bring it and go, no, you wrote this in your book, you know. But here's the lesson for you. I sat there and I listened to what he said, and I realized my job was not to be right. My job was to be gracious. So I sort of backpedaled around it and figured out another way to ask a question. But Stephen Sondheim, you were wrong. It was in your book, so just telling you.
That's incredible. Can you talk about what made you fall in love with music when you were a young boy? What is it that inspired you to go into this field?
Well, I remember I was in the orchestra. I grew up in Texas, actually. I've been in New York for 30 years, but I was born and raised right here in Texas. And I grew up in Midland in West Texas.
Oh, we played there.
Yeah, we played there.
Yeah.
It's great. It's a great town. My father's still there. And I was in the orchestra, so I played sousaphone first and then stand-up bass. And I remember playing Scheherazade by Rimsky-Korsakov, and there was that moment where all of a sudden the story started to really play out in my head, and it wasn't notes on a page, it was this emotional expression, this storytelling that happened through music, that can only happen through music, that hit me in a certain way, that it was sort of an aha moment for me that really brought me to classical music.
Well, we're hoping all of you out there are experiencing aha moments here at the 2017 Cliburn.
Absolutely. We have just a couple short questions to ask you. Elliot, first, you are in the hot seat for Cliburning questions.
Okay, what is your classical desert island recording?
Mine would be the Concierto de Aranjuez of Joaquin Rodrigo, the great guitar concerto that Miles
Slow
Davis
movement.
covered and so many people, yeah.
Well, what about your desert recording non-classical?
That would be the Talking Heads, the best of the Talking Heads.
Okay, which composer no longer living would you have liked to interview for your radio show?
Oh my God, without question, Liszt. I mean, he was crazy man, right? Great player, great personality, great composer.
Bon vivant.
Right, love to have interviewed Liszt.
Elliot Forrest, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.